Hello and welcome to our presentation today. This presentation is based on a research paper commissioned by the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, done by the Chamber of Commerce staff, and as well a considerable amount of time put in by our volunteer researcher, Barry Nanny. The facts and the findings that you'll see here today could not have been put together without the excellent work of the Chamber staff as well as Barry Nanny, and we're hoping that you'll gain a better sense of how competitive Sault Ste. Marie is from a tax perspective when looking at other municipalities across the province, and how we stack up in comparison to our peers, both across the province and throughout Northern Ontario. We will take a special detailed look today into commercial and industrial tax rates, as this is what affects the business community, and that's who we're here to advocate for. We also want to indicate that it's the health of the economy that really affects Sault Ste. Marie as a whole, and it's our position that a healthy economy will not only is good for business but good for the community as a whole, as a healthy economy creates jobs, creates opportunity for everyone across the community. And there's a lot of both social problems and economic problems that can be resolved in part by a healthy economy. So we're going to talk about that here today, and we're going to talk about how our tax rates, the trend that we've seen since 2007 to 2015, and what we feel should be happens as far as next steps on how we can create even a more competitive environment for our businesses and an area of higher prosperity for our community. So what you're going to see here today is data that's in all publicly available information, data that is statistically relevant, has been compared across the province. What we're going to look at is comparing Sault Ste. Marie to the 104 Ontario municipalities where the data has been made available to us. As well, we've also taken some slices of the data. There are some charts and graphs here today where we'll look at communities above 5,000 people, as we feel that is a statistically relevant way of looking at things. We'll also segment the data and look at just Northern Ontario communities, as we feel that is also important to look at how we compare against municipalities also operating in the north. So what was striking to us is that among the 104 Ontario municipalities, Sault Ste. Marie's commercial and industrial tax rates were always among the very highest. We found ourselves always among the top 10 in tax rates for both commercial and industrial tax brackets. This to us was concerning, and is something we want to take a deeper dive into here today. When we're looking at the 10 highest industrial municipal rates across the province, Sault Ste. Marie found itself the third highest among 104 Ontario municipalities surveyed. And an important thing to note is there's a number of different ways to look at competitiveness of your city and how your tax rates compare against other communities. The Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce believes that the most accurate way to look at a tax comparison is per $100,000 of MPAC assessment value. We believe that the MPAC assessment value, although not perfect, takes into account a number of factors and variables that contribute to the economics of the actual item that we're looking at. So the MPAC assessment value will take into account opportunities, it'll take into account prospective revenues, it'll take into account what like properties sold for around the area. So we see that as a way of taking market factors and market conditions into account. There are other ways of looking at comparisons, and some comparisons will look at average size homes or look at cost per square foot. Our issue with things like cost per square foot is that we don't feel that all square feet across the province are created equal, and a square foot in Sault Ste. Marie has the ability to generate X amount of revenue, and we think that the amount of potential revenue that you can generate from a square foot, say in Sault Ste. Marie, may not be the same as London, Ontario, may not be the same as Ottawa, or in fact downtown Toronto. So an average per square foot, because there's so many differences in potential earnings and potential revenue and the inability to take into account market factors, we don't feel that the per square foot comparison is as telling or as accurate as per $100,000 of assessment value. So Sault Ste. Marie here, and you can see by the asterisk, is one of the few communities that chooses to apply a large industrial tax rate. And that's shown here in this graph. Of the few communities that do choose to tax their large industrial businesses higher than the standard industrial rate, Sault Ste. Marie is the second highest in the province among the 104 municipalities. Smooth Rock Falls has a population of approximately 1,200 people. If we strip out all communities less than 5,000 people, then Sault Ste. Marie quickly rises to the top of the group, being the highest community that is choosing to apply a large industrial tax rate. We also took a detailed look into commercial rates, and we've looked at the commercial occupied rate, where Sault Ste. Marie finds itself with the 8th highest tax in the province among the 104 municipalities that the data surveyed. What's also important to note is that Sault Ste. Marie chooses to apply a different, and more importantly, a higher tax rate for office buildings and shopping centers. And what we see on this slide is the 10 highest office building municipal tax rates across the province, and Sault Ste. Marie finds itself with the highest office building tax rate at 4.42%. What's concerning to the Chamber when we're seeing things like this, with your office space having the highest rate in the province, your large industrial rate being second highest, or essentially one of the two highest of the province, to us, these are the engines of our economy. These are where the high-paying jobs will be found. These are where the jobs with good benefits can be found. These are where people can get a job in a large industrial player, or a good office building, an office professional job in an office place, and really raise a family and really help your economy grow, especially through the indirect jobs that are directly related to some of these high-paying jobs in the manufacturing sector and high-paying jobs in professional office space. Some could say the ratio can be almost 3-to-1 for indirect to direct that's happening off a ratio such as this. So what we can see here is our shopping center rates. Again, Sault Ste. Marie, the 6th highest. We've also now taken a bit of a more narrow lens. We've looked at Sault Ste. Marie in comparison to other Northern Ontario communities. And really what we look at here is acknowledging the fact that operating in Northern Ontario is a bit different than operating in Southern Ontario. There are considerable operational costs that are unique to Northern Ontario. The operating environment has some unique aspects of it, and what we've tried to do here is to really take a narrow lens and look at how does Sault Ste. Marie compare against the other larger communities of Northern Ontario. What we found here is in the comparison of industrial tax rates, Sault Ste. Marie had the highest standard tax rate among the North. When we looked at large industrial rates, Sault Ste. Marie had, again, the highest rate in the North. Most staggering here, most alarming here is the large difference, or the considerable difference between the next nearest rate at 5.2 to our 7.45. Again, these are what we really feel is what our economy, the beat at which our economy goes. What really makes our economy prosper, what really makes our economy churn, are these industrial players, or these industrial businesses that we are fortunate enough to have in our community. And what we're seeing here is they are at a bit of a disadvantage in comparison to industries in other Northern Ontario communities. We feel that we should be competitive across the North, we should be competitive across the province, and these are things that we want to talk about in more detail and really start the conversation around, is this the best way our community should be moving forward? Are tax rates that are among the highest in the province really taking away from business expansion, taking away from business reinvestment and business retention? It's difficult to attract investment as it is, but a prudent investor is going to look at the tax rates in Sault Ste. Marie being among the highest, and maybe choose to vote with his dollars and take them to another community. And it's well aware that capital will flow in the path of least resistance and most certainty, and these types of numbers are definitely not to our advantage. When it came to commercial tax, we saw Sault Ste. Marie being the 3rd highest in the North for standard commercial tax. However, when we went to office buildings, again, we find ourselves as the highest in the North. Again, these are the well-paying jobs, the professional office-based jobs large industrial jobs. These are the jobs that bring indirect jobs with them. It's these well-paying professional space office jobs that'll bring a number of indirect jobs in the retail space, and indirect jobs in hospitality, and indirect jobs in construction, really what makes our economy go, the engines of our economy. When we look at our findings and we summarize them, we can see that since 2007, the province has reduced the tax rate for the educational portion of the municipal tax levy. The province has been working hard to do that. The city of Sault Ste. Marie has not followed suit with equivalent reductions. As the province dictates what the educational rate portion should be, what we'd like to see and like to expect is that for every point reduction in the educational rate, that point reduction is passed on to the ratepayer, both in the residential, commercial, and industrial basis. The city of Sault Ste. Marie has not followed suit with similar reductions, and this is something we want to explore in a bit more detail and show through a bit more charts and graphs. As a matter of fact, what we've seen is the overall rates on businesses, most notably industrial, has actually increased as we've seen parallel steps in the educational rate portion. So what you see here is the red line, which is the educational rate, and we can see since 2007 to 2015, there's a year-over-year decrease in the educational rate portion. That has not been accompanied by a parallel reduction is the standard the standard commercial rate. The standard commercial rate has dipped slightly, but in essence, from 2007 to 2015, has basically flatlined and remained very consistent among those years, despite a significant drop in the educational rate portion. Same can be said for shopping centers, as shopping centers have been relatively consistent. There's a slight dip from 2007 to 2015, but the educational rate has had a significant dip. And again, these savings, these reductions have not been passed on to the business owners. Commercial office buildings, very similar as the other commercial trends, where the reduction in the red line, the educational rate, has not been passed on to equivalent reductions in the office building commercial rate. What we see here is something that is concerning for us. It's a bit troubling to see as the educational rate portion has dropped. The standard industrial rate has actually increased year over year, and these savings not only are not being passed along, but we're seeing year-over-year increases and year-over-year increases at quite an alarming rate. The large industrial rate is something that is truly concerning, something that really needs more discussion and really needs to be looked at further as we see a significant increases in the large industrial tax rate. We're seeing the educational rate decrease year over year, and it's almost the inverse is happening with the large industrial rate. This is not what we expect. We expect to be, quite frankly, the opposite, the savings to be passed on to the business owners, being passed on to the groups that really bring prosperity to the community, but instead what we're seeing here is year-over-year increases. What we're seeing is any commercial or industrial total rate reduction since 2007 would be primarily due to the drop in education rate. Now, we haven't really been seen any reductions in industrial. We've seen very minimal reductions in commercial, but what we'd expect is that these educational rate savings and educational rate reductions be passed on to the ratepayers, and that's really not the case. That's not what we're seeing. There was reductions in the residential rate since 2007 to 2015, and that was passed on in the residential ratepayer. Unfortunately, that was not the same for the industrial and the commercial clients. Sault Ste. Marie is one of only 16 of the 104 municipalities that opts to apply a different and, more importantly, higher rate for large industrial entities. Our large industrial tax rate is among the highest, with municipalities over 5,000 people, and the second highest as a whole. What we're seeing here is a chart that compares the large industrial rate of Sault Ste. Marie to that of the entire province. And we're seeing here that we are the highest, and we're the highest by a considerable margin. The 7.45% is considerably higher by the next highest municipality, being Thunder Bay at 5.2. This is definitely putting us at a competitive disadvantage. It's with this type of tax rate in place, it's going to be challenging to choose to find investors to invest into the large industrial rate in Sault Ste. Marie when they can go to any of these other communities with a lower rate. It's also going to be add challenges and disadvantages to our existing large industrial players. And we can see here that these tax rates are definitely higher than that among the rest of the province, and putting our existing employers and our existing industries at a disadvantage and asking them to share a larger burden than what is typical across the province. We've looked in detail at the standard rate and compared it to the large industrial rate. And we're seeing here that the difference between the large industrial rate and the standard rate is also not typical what you'd see across the province. That our gap between the large industrial standard rate and the standard occupied rate is actually much wider than what we've normally seen. That's illustrated by this graph here. What we've done is graph the rate in which the large industrial players would pay for their tax rate in this yellow line. We've then taken the standard industrial rate and graphed it in this purple line. And the lighter purple line is the differential. What we're trying to show by the differential is the difference between the standard rate and the large industrial rate is higher in Sault Ste. Marie and is wider in Sault Ste. Marie than any of these other communities across the province. And when you're looking at the differential between Sault Ste. Marie and the next largest player, being Owen Sound, the gap is essentially double what the next highest player is. The 3.25 gap, the 3.25 differential is almost double that of the gap in Owen Sound. So we're really asking our large industrial player to not only pay the highest tax burden across the province, but we're essentially increase the taxes a wider gap than anyone else over the standard industrial rate. The large industrial players in Sault Ste. Marie experienced a staggering 26% increase in their municipal property taxes in 2013. That's illustrated by this graph here, where we can see a standard year-over-year increase from 2007 to 2015 with this large jump between 2012 and 2013. And what we believe is this is due to St. Mary's paper buildings coming down, that industrial tax base being displaced. SR also took a few buildings down and got reassessed, and that tax burden was redisplaced. Where we struggle with things like this is that this is truly not sustainable. This is really asking a select few, and the select few that unfortunately bring most prosperity to your community to pay the highest amount of the burden and perhaps an unfair percentage of the burden. We understand that things cost more tomorrow than they do today. We're well adversed with the concepts such as inflation and how things do cost more money in the future. However, what we're seeing here is increases that are much higher than the rate of inflation. And we would be accepting of year-over-year tax increases that in which the rate of inflation, but where we disagree with anything over and above that. And when we look at how the rate of inflation compares to these year-over-year industrial rates, it's absolutely concerning. With this lower red line, what we've done here is looked at the rates of inflation in Canada according to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and graphed that from 2007 through to 2015. And up above here we have the industrial tax rates and their year-over-year increases. And what we're seeing here, and what's most alarming, is that the inflation rate has actually had a slight dip since 2007 to 2015. That means that common goods that we have to purchase have actually decreased slightly in cost. And what we're seeing here is a significant increase in the large industrial rate, and trends of this nature are truly not sustainable. They create environments that are not competitive. They create environments that find difficulty to attract investment and difficulty to reinvest and grow your business and expand your business. And these are the types of things that we want to shed light upon and really start the conversation around, is this going to create a prosperous Sault Ste. Marie? Is this going to create an economy in Sault Ste. Marie that's going to grow, or is this going to create something that's going to contract? And we're in this school of thought that this is definitely going to cause economies to contract and something not sustainable for the overall growth of the community. And again, we believe that a lot of social and economic problems can be solved through the creation of jobs, through the creation of reinvestment, and these are the type of environments that just won't foster that. What we want to do is work together as a community, work together with city staff, work together with city leadership and the business community to really create an environment that fosters investment and fosters prosperity and growth. And we're hoping that presentations like this shed light on some of the issues that we have and the key challenges that we have so that we can address them as a community. Sault Ste. Marie is one of the only 8 among the 104 municipalities that opts to apply a different and, more importantly, higher rate for office buildings and shopping centers over the standard commercial rate. What we're seeing here is office buildings in Sault Ste. Marie and what our tax rate is when comparison across Northern Ontario. We are, again, as we listed before, the highest. When we look at our commercial tax rates and compare it across the province, we're seeing here that our office tax rate is the highest across the province, and we're going to see that our commercial rates, as we listed earlier, are not the highest, but among the highest in the province, among the top 10. And again, it's about creating an environment that's competitive, creating an environment that attracts investment, creating an environment that allows our existing players to expand and retain jobs, creating an environment that creates jobs and allows a community to prosper. And what we're saying here is, being as ranked as we are with higher tax rates than other communities, we're not really creating that. Sault Ste. Marie is also one of 7 Ontario municipalities that opts to apply a different and, more importantly, higher tax rate for shopping centers. Again, we're choosing to add more burden to some of these segments, and it's some of the highest in the province. When taken as a whole, we're seeing that the business community is sharing a higher percentage of the tax burden than that of other communities. It's sharing a high percentage of the tax burden, and it's really coming down to affecting how we do business in Sault Ste. Marie and how competitive we are to other communities. And this is something that this report and in this presentation we're hoping really sheds light to. At the same time, we've seen residential rates decrease since 2007, which is a good trend. We like to see rates decrease, but they've decreased at the expense of business, and that's something that just isn't good for the overall health of a community. And what we're really trying to do is create a community that's prosperous and create a community of opportunity. And we're really not doing that by shifting the burden from the residents to the business to the point where the businesses can't compete because they're not in an even playing field. What we've really looked at here in the next graph is something called a ratio. And what the ratio is really doing is looking at how have the other tax categories grown or contracted in comparison to the residential rate. And as we said earlier, the residential rate has decreased from 2007 to 2015. What has that done to the commercial and the industrial rates? And this next graph will do that and do that comparison. So what we're seeing here is the blue line holding our residential rate constant at a constant 1. And since 2007 to 2015, we've seen the commercial rate steadily increase. We've seen the shopping centers, as teal line with the blue circles, steadily increase. We've seen the industrial rates increase as well as the office buildings, and most importantly, the large industrial rate as well. So what we're seeing here is year-over-year increases of the tax base in comparison to the residential rates when you're looking at commercial and industrial taxes. We're seeing a complete shift of the tax burden from the residentials in the individual residential rate to the commercial and the industrial rate, which is really creating somewhat of an unsustainable trends where we're seeing year-over-year increases. And again, what we'd really like to see happen are these trends flatline and eventually reverse. We really want to see these trends in the commercial and the industrial tax rates decrease and create a more competitive environment. And we'd really like to see Sault Ste. Marie getting on some of the lists of the lowest business tax rates in the province, fostering more investment, attracting more business expansion, and creating more opportunities so our business owners can reinvest in their own economy. What we're seeing here is the year-over-year increases from 2006 to 2015 in the actual tax levy for the city of Sault Ste. Marie. And again, we've pointed out in previous graphs that the rate of inflation at this time has flatlined at best, and most even more importantly, decrease. So we've seen the CPI inflation rate decrease from 2007 to 2015, but we've seen our amount of taxation increase considerably from that period. So we're hoping that we can have a conversation more around, let's use the rate of inflation as our upper limit increase year over year to taxation. And that brings us to our conclusion slide here, really our next steps and what we want to do from here. The point of this presentation and the tax paper as a whole is really to allow everyone to acknowledge the current state and acknowledge where we are and acknowledge how competitive we are to other cities both across Northern Ontario and across the province. And what we're trying to do here is really start the conversation and let everyone get on the same page that we really do have some work to do with our commercial and industrial tax rates. We also want acknowledgement that the ratios between residential, commercial, and industrial have changed significantly since 2007 to 2015, and acknowledgement of the tax burden has aggressively been shifted from residential over to the business community. The engines of our economy. It's been shifted to those that create jobs. It's been shifted to those that bring prosperity and attract dollars into the community to recirculate through all sectors. Most importantly, we want this presentation to start the conversation on how we can be catalysts of change to get our economy growing again. We want the conversation to be revolved around what can we do to help Sault Ste. Marie become the most competitive place in Ontario to do business. And that's going to involve a number of conversations. It's going to involve conversations around cost reductions. It's going to involve a cultural change. It's going to involve communication, conversation, and efforts around continuous improvement. It's going to involve us looking at how we can do better in all that we do. It's going to talk about austerity measures. It's going to talk about privatization. These are the types of conversations we need to have because the situation is this uncompetitive that everything has to be on the table to get our economy competitive again, to get our tax rates among the top 10 on Ontario as far as competitiveness, not the top 10 in highest taxed communities. So what we're hoping is presentations like this and papers like this spur the conversation around things like a continuous improvement task force, a group that really looks at how the city can aggressively get better at all that they do, aggressively get more competitive at all that they do across all departments, cost reductions year over year across all departments, look at different ways in which we can save and different ways in which we can adopt best practices from other communities. We also want to look at things like a continuous improvement fund. Speaking with city staff, a lot of the capital improvement ideas that have good payback, that have good return on investment, don't get adopted simply because there's not a budget for that. Just like we have an economic development fund, a continuous improvement fund would be something that would save the community money in our mind year over year. That these ideas and these concepts that have a quick payback, 1 to 2 year payback, quick return on investment that yields savings for many years to come could be adopted with a continuous improvement fund. We take an idea like LED street lighting that the city is working on adopting right now, which will save the community $1 million a year based on a new technology and adopting a best practice and adopting a new technology. We think that logic could be cascaded across the city and across all departments, where we'd look at if $1 million can be saved with a change in LED street lighting, let's take half of that million and let's create this continuous improvement fund and start looking at other great ideas. Why not roll LED lights across every city building? We know that there's a good payback. We know the payback in LED lighting is a year to maybe 18 months. Let's use that capital from that fund to fund ideas like that and roll them out, knowing that the savings are going to be year in and year out across the whole city. And I'm sure there's a number of great ideas that the city staff knows, that the frontline operators know and see every day, better ways of doing things. A fund like that will really allow that to happen. But what we want to do is really start that conversation, and we're hoping that city staff and city leadership is open to the Chamber of Commerce and the business community getting involved and really helping to become the most competitive place in the province to do business. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm Jason Nacarado. We thank you for listening to our presentation today, and we're looking forward to working with you to make Sault Ste. Marie the most prosperous place to do business in the future. Thank you.